what we're going to talk about today is, and we touched on this a little bit, Mike and Natalie, last week, was, where should you start in the 5 ways? Which one should you work on first? Mm-hmm. And we talked about, most business owners gravitate to, I've got to get more leads. If I'm going to get more profits, I got to generate more leads. Well, unfortunately, generating more leads is the most expensive of the 5 ways to implement. It's the most expensive one. So what we like to do in working with our clients is focus on some of those 5 ways that don't cost any money. So we can start to build profitability, start to build consistent cash flow, and then move into the more expensive ways to generate more revenue and more profit. So what I thought we'd do today is just talk about one of the less expensive, one of the 5 ways, and that's profit margins. Stay away from the lead generation, and just let's talk about profit margins. All right? Now, profit margins is really the percentage of revenue that's left over after you pay all the bills. It's that simple.
Right.
Right? So in order to get a handle and improve your profit margins, what do you need to do? What's the most important thing you need to know first?
I would imagine you need to know what your costs are.
You got to know what your costs are. You got to know your numbers. So the question is, how many of our listeners actually have good financial statements, on their business? That's where it all starts. You've got to understand your numbers. And the first way to do that is to get QuickBooks, get a package that is simple to use, and start generating financial statements for yourselves, profit and loss statements, at least once a month. Mm-hmm. And go down and look at those numbers. Go look at those expenses. Now, profit margins, you've got gross profit margins and you've got net profit margins, right? So you've got to pay attention to those kinds of things as well. And profit margin percentages are also important in figuring out what you break even as well, right?
There are also fixed costs, I would imagine, in there that have a lot to do with it as well.
Sure, because every dollar that you save in fixed cost is another dollar in profit.
Right.
Right? Mm-hmm. What we've found, Mike, that's interesting, is that in growing businesses, people tend to take their eyes, or business owners and leaders tend to take their eyes off the fixed cost number.
Right.
They're focused on the direct costs that drive revenue, materials and labor. And they tend to sort of ignore those fixed costs, but that's a dollar for dollar savings, right, in profitability. So what we coach our business owners on is, hey, let's not take our eye off the ball on those fixed costs. And very simply, to go through your financial statements once a month. We've got some clients that can't wait to get them. They'll go at them once a week and print them off. And it's interesting, what those folks will tell us is, hey, I love to go through my financial statements once a week because they become more real to me. Because I'm doing transactions and I look and they're showing up right in the financial statements. So now, I just spent X amount of dollars on office supplies, or I just spent X amount of dollars on my telephone bill. I can see it in the financial statement, and it's all fresh in my mind because I just looked at the invoice and I just had to pay the bill. So they can ask themselves better questions because the information is fresh in their minds.
As a coach, do you have some different ideas to help people along to cut some of those fixed costs? For example, there's all sorts of deals that could be made on your space. Landlords, and landlords are able to be good landlords are able to be dealt with on different bases. But a lot of people don't know how to do that to begin with. Right. Are you guys able to help them to look at their situation and say, hey, go back to your landlord and talk about maybe taking that 3-year lease to a 7-year lease, but see if you can do a bubble at the end to increase the rent or whatever? You guys have a number of those suggestions to help people out? Yeah,
that's a great question, Mike. Typically what we'll do is we'll make sure, first and foremost, that the financial statements that we're getting are accurate. All right, so that's the first step. You've got to make sure that the numbers that are reported are actually correct. Then what we'll do is we'll take a certain portion. We're talking about fixed costs. So we'll say, okay, here's our fixed costs. Here's how they've been running. How are they trending? Are they going up? Are they going down? Or are they just staying flat?
Right.
Good. All right, so here's the homework for the week. I want you to go through your profit and loss statement, and for every single fixed cost that is in your P&L, here's the questions you need to ask. Does that fixed cost generate revenue?
Right.
Yes or no? Okay, if it does, then come up with 4 ideas on how to reduce it.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't, come up with 4 ideas on how we can do without it.
Mm-hmm.
So we get the business owner thinking, answering those questions. So that would be homework for one of our coaching clients for the week.
Right.
Go through your P&L, answer those questions on each line item. Then what we'll do at the following coaching session, and we'll sit down and brainstorm with them.
Do you think there's any such thing as a really hard fixed cost that nothing, that everything, I don't want to say everything's negotiable, but is everything malleable enough that you can work it around a little bit just about?
Boy, you can always come up with some strategy.
Yeah, I don't
some
know.
idea. You know, I mean, look, rent, once you sign up for a 5-year lease on a rent and it's built out and that sort of thing, that can be difficult to get out of.
Right.
However,
Insurance?
insurance is something you can always go and bid out, right? You can always go and bid out insurance. As far as the rent, you've always got subleasing opportunities, right?
Sure.
If that space is too big or not big enough, you sublease it. So you make sure when you negotiate your lease, you've got the opportunity to sublease. So you build that flexibility in for yourself. Talking about insurances, especially health insurance these days, is a huge cost for business owners. And it has gotten, talk about complexity, it has gotten so complex with HRAs, HSAs, all of the different types of insurance programs. And, man, a busy business owner just doesn't have the time to learn all of those things. So we can help them with that through our network of insurance people that we work with to cut through all of the complexity and guide them through with some simple strategies. So bidding out insurances is huge. And not only the group health insurance programs, but the liability and the property and casualty. And all of those insurances are very competitive marketplace out there. Very competitive.
And there's always a deal too to be in product lines to be had, I'm sure, as well. Distributors, there's a tough competitive marketplace right there.
Boy, that's the thing when we talk about profit margins. Not only do you have to know your company's gross margin and your net margin, you have to know your margin by product line and by service line. Because there's gold in that. If you know that a certain product or service line has got a real high gross margin, that's the one you want to be selling. That's the one you want to be marketing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but if you don't know those numbers, you can't even ask the question. You can't even take the first step. So understanding, your margins by product and service line is huge. Is huge. The other opportunity that you have in profit margins are bundling product and services, right? You've got your higher margin products and services. Bundle your lower margin in there with it. So what are you doing? You're increasing your average dollar sale. You're increasing your average gross margin in that one transaction. So understanding those costs, and I think that's a great one, going out to distributors and negotiating, especially your materials costs, is massive. A lot of people don't do that enough. And what's interesting, Mike, is that sometimes what we'll see is business owners will go out and negotiate a better price with their distributor, and they can't wait to get out into the marketplace and pass it on to their customers.
Sure.
Why? You've just done all that work.
And you cut the price again, another big discount. We talked about that a few weeks back about the discounting thing, which is, step to suicide.
Right. Let's talk about that. So some people think, that's a great idea. Let's give our customers for the month of May a 10% discount. All right. So then you go through and you look at your numbers and you find out you're operating on a 20% margin. You're giving your customers a 10% discount. You just gave up half your profits.
And now you're down to a 10% margin.
Right.
Which doesn't leave you any protection at all against anything.
Doesn't leave you any room. So the opportunity here is to increase your prices and figure out how to sell and market and present yourself in the marketplace as someone who's providing incremental value to the marketplace so that you can earn what you deserve, right?
Right.